certain roles in film demand a degree of theatricality. My first day on Minority Report, I had said to myself, well, I've got to bring a degree of subtlety to this role, and I'm doing a rehearsal with Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise in Tom's bus that was like a shopping mall food court. And Steven doesn't audition people, you just get a call and you're told, would you have a role? And then you say, well, I'd like to read it, and then he says, why? But in any case, I hadn't auditioned, and he said, what is going on here? I didn't hire you for this. Where is Tim Blake Nelson? What are you doing? And I said, what do you, and he said, and he just started fresco painting on me. He said, do it bigger. And so I tried that, and he said, a Boston accent. And then I did that, and he said, 10 years earlier, and he just started fresco painting with me, and then he found the character, and it was brilliant. That's why he's so great. But I brought the wrong paradigm. So.
Wow. These are not just men of film, TV, but of stage. How important has it been, the stage training? In other words, the ability to, whether it's speaking Shakespeare, Tennessee Williams, whatever, has that been a crucial component of, for example, even the work that you have done with Anesthesia? Training
is what it's all been about for me. And I went to a 4-year training program, not a 3-year training program. And we focused we were always doing Shakespeare. And essentially, the school I attended, the paradigm was, if you can do Shakespeare, then you can do anything. So every rule that applies to Shakespeare applies to Mamet, Aaron Sorkin, or a movie in which you're going to improvise. So that was essential for me, and it's been essential for me as a writer. But what continues to be a lifetime of school for me, which is what's great about what we do. I will never know even close to sufficiently how to do this, but I just I want to keep learning and getting better at it, and I swear to you, there's not a disingenuous syllable in there. It's the way I feel, and walking on that set, just like working in theater as well, and being around the inventive minds, and what a mind Nora had. This brilliant journalist, and at that time also a brilliant screenwriter, directing her first film, and she was, I just experienced her being condescended to by department heads and how she dealt with that. And I remember she said to the DP, who was wonderful, and I think shot the movie really well and served her beautifully, I witnessed a conversation in which she said, all right, I'm just going to stop you there, because I'm basically, you're saying I'm a first-time director and I don't know what I'm talking about. So tell me what you need, be straight with me so that we can solve this problem. I don't really care, if I look like an idiot. Just tell me so I can make a decision, and let's just be clear with each other. And it was so disarming to this guy, and he told her what it was that he wanted. I think it was, why a certain shot wouldn't work grammatically with the master, and why she should use, maybe a certain lens wouldn't work. And she said, all right, well, let's just do it that way. And you see that movie, and like all of Nora's movies, it's directed with a wonderfully sure hand. Certainly directing movies and writing movies has helped me as an actor, It helps me see my way into a part. It helps me try to intuit how a character I'm playing fits into the bigger story. And since I mainly play character parts, that's a really useful tool to have, to understand that, okay, I'm feeding into something that's bigger than me. And so if you think of it as an abstract painting, what's the color here? Mm-hmm. And what are the other colors on the canvas to which I'm really relating, and how do I fit into this bigger work? Over my career as an actor, which started out playing really, really small roles, and then they began to get bigger as my 30-year now career began to transpire. I've just learned to become more responsible in terms of caring for my performance as to where it is in the story. And I've gotten better at that. I can look back on some of my early films where I started to get larger roles and think, my God, you're out of place in that scene. You seem in a place in terms of your character and his needs and the stuff arrayed against him. You seem to be in an earlier scene, or you seem to be playing a scene that's 2 scenes ahead. You're not in the moment of that scene, simply because you didn't, when you woke up that day to play the role, to play those scenes, you didn't recognize where you were in the story. It's so darn basic. And when you're doing a play, you're acting sequentially, and that's very easy. Unless it's fragmented in time, but leave that aside. In a movie, you're shooting out of order because it's based on other exigencies. And so I've just demanded more of myself in terms of knowing where I am in the story. And there's also something I do now with roles, which is I learn the entire part before I shoot a single day. And that just gives me a more holistic understanding of the part. And I find that I'm never lost when I'm getting to set. I know where the character is and in the trajectory of the story.
Yeah, and I think audiences are sophisticated enough to know when that's when an actor and a production is really, really has taken this seriously, and it makes the film so much more immersive. It really is. It's a really immersive experience.
I did do an enormous amount of prep for this role, and particularly with the guns. And we had an excellent, very experienced armorer on this film. And I was working with the guns on a daily basis for a good 3 weeks. And with the pistol, a lot longer than that. I actually had it sent up to my house in New York well in advance of arriving early on set. So I had it for another 3 weeks in New York before I went down for 3 weeks of pre-production. And I was just loading it and unloading it constantly because you have to look like the gun is an appendage. And this to me is a privilege of acting, is getting to learn new stuff and to embrace the demands, of looking like you've been doing something all your life. Really, my work with Potsy, which was fairly extensive, a collaboration, if you will, on the character between the writer, director, and me, that thankfully he was willing to do, especially once I made it clear that, look, the last word is always going to be yours, but let's work on this together so we can build a character who answers all the challenges and exciting demands that your script has on the page. And so it was really a process of working on that literally for months and months at the end, for the last month, several hours a day with Potsy, just going through the material.
And I also think and hope that directing movies allows me to be just a better actor for the director in terms of being easy to work with and not wasting time, showing up prepared, all that stuff that actors should be.
Yeah. And I'm sure that as a filmmaker, you've run into actors that both check all the boxes of a good actor and those that don't. You run into frustrations, and you kind of respond in that way with your own acting.
Yeah.
It all kind of feeds off of each other. Yeah. What is one piece of advice that you would give yourself when you were first getting your start? What's something that you've learned along the way of your 30 plus years in the industry that you wish you knew way back when?
Well, that I wish I knew way back when. I wasted a lot of time early on with unproductive rage, that it wasn't happening quickly enough for me, which is pretty ridiculous now that I look back on it, because it has all worked out very well. But before the Coens came along and plucked me from true, deep obscurity, that was 10 years. And there were times when I would get roles, particularly off Broadway, and think, now it's gonna be easier for me. And it just never was. And I was extremely frustrated by that. And I got a great piece of advice from the actress Lois Smith. I just had my first really great stage role. I got to play Thersites in Troilus and Cressida in Shakespeare in the Park. So this is not a very well-known play, but a great fool role. And it was this wonderful director, Mark Wing Davey, who's an idol of mine and continues to be a mentor. And packed audiences every night, and sometimes standing ovations, and it's changed. Everything's going to change. And then the play closed, and I was back in my apartment, out of work. The phone was not ringing. I had no scripts to read, nothing. And Lois called and just was checking in, as friends do, and she said, "You really sound down, Tim." And I said, "I just thought it was all going to be different." And she said, "It's not. And you're not just an actor, you're a character actor. And it's never, ever going to be about the one job. Ever. Even when you think it is, even when the world is telling you it is, and they say, now you've arrived, now you're on that list, it still won't be. It's about an accumulation of characters. It's not about one role. And as soon as you think it's about one role, you're really no longer an actor. It's about a lifetime of work and what you accumulate in that lifetime. It's the whole. And that has remained absolutely true. And it's true about directing as well. I'm so grateful that I heard it early on. And I really have now started to think, finally, long term. And Lois started me on that path. And then the other bit of advice was shared to me. It was, I think, Peter Hedges told me this, the writer Peter Hedges, and he heard it from, I believe, the writer Richard Nelson, who said, another playwright, who said, "I'm just going to refuse to go away." And when it gets really tough, which it always does, no matter how successful your career seems to be, or no matter how successful somebody else's career seems to be, they and you are always going to go through
those really, really tough times when you're just eviscerated by either the business or a critic or an agent who drops you or a movie you get cut out of, or maybe you're even replaced in a movie by another actor after you've already shot. I mean, all of this happens to everyone. You just have to have the confidence to refuse to go away and know, just bringing it back to Lois's comment, that it's a long process, a very long career. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll want to have accumulated something gorgeous and multifaceted and honorable and worthy of the respect of your peers, your children, and those who are going to see what you've put down in years to come.
Yeah, a seminal moment for me was I had this tape I would carry around, and that I would unfairly just berate my agents about making sure that whenever I went in for an audition, that they got my tape, that they see my tape, and it was my reel. And it wasn't even particularly very good, I don't think. It was really early on, and some of it was, I don't even know what was on there, but I was obsessed with it. And I went into some audition, this was in about 1990, 1991, and it was for a sketch comedy show. And if there was one thing I knew that I could do, it was that. I could do a range of characters. And I didn't do so well in the audition. And then I realized that I'd forgotten to give my tape. And again, I was just so unhealthily obsessed with this tape. It's VHS tape, not even a DVD. And so I went back in about 15 minutes later with the tape. I got back on the subway and I went there, and the room was full of other people wanting to get in, and I waited for the casting director to come out so that I could give her the tape, because I thought, even though I didn't do so well, if they see the tape, and I held it up to the woman, and she just looked at me and she said, no.
Right.
And I don't begrudge her that. I hadn't done well, and they weren't interested in me, but it was so savagely demeaning in such a casual way. It was just, I was just simply swatted away, and it was just devastating. The woman probably doesn't even, she didn't even remember it 2 hours later, 30 minutes later. But to me, I was so easily dismissed, and I just said, all right, I'm done with that. Mm-hmm. I have to find ways to have a measure of control, or I'm not going to make it. Mm-hmm. I just won't make it. I don't have the psychological strength to make it.
Yeah.
There is no greater power that any of us has than being able to write. If you can write a script, or even a one-person show that will appeal to an audience, well, that's a very important half of that sentence, then suddenly you're taking power away from others over your career, and you're giving it to yourself. And being able to write my own material has led to everything for me, including Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because I met Joel and Ethan when they came to see a cut of my first film, Eye of God. That's how I first met them, and began to engage with them, and then that led to a friendship with Joel. And then they put me in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So even on that level, that's a story about, because I was writing, it allowed me to circulate in other milieus and meet other people who were going to have an enormous impact over me and what I do. And that simply started when I was in, as I said, when I was in acting school. Because already I was wary of even the administration at a 4-year acting program, deciding what roles I was going to play and how I was going to play them. And I just wanted space where I could determine that. And where I could do that for my peers too. And say, hey, look, they're not seeing you this way, but I've written something for you that maybe is a bit different. Will you be in it? And people did and responded to that, and that was very nourishing for me. So I would encourage anyone out there who gets frustrated waiting for the phone to ring to write your own material. And if you don't feel you can do that on your own, get a partner. There's nothing wrong with that. Or get a group of people, form an ensemble. And particularly with character actors and comic actors, almost everyone who has succeeded can tell you some version of that story. Rainn Wilson did the New Bozina with David Costabile. You've got Upright Citizens Brigade, Second City. All these originally were created by out-of-work actors wanting some measure of control over who was going to see them and how.
But I'm so careful about in preparation. I like to think of myself as a director who gets all of the decisions that can be made before production decided before production, so that no time is wasted during the shoot day whatsoever, and therefore all time is lavished on what only occurs during the shoot day, which is capturing those scintillating, ineffable, unpredictable moments between scene partners in their interactions with one another. What camera movements do you need for specific lines? I realized when we got to the shoot day and when we were in the middle of shooting it that it was general. My decision had been general. And generality, just like with acting, is your enemy. You want specificity. And so I hadn't figured out, I want to be close in here, I want to be pulling out here, I want to use this line in this particular way and that line in that particular way. And I was figuring it out on the fly and doing al fresco painting when that should have been oil painting. And that was the biggest challenge. And it came from my own negligence. So there you go. And as many in this room know, there are fewer and fewer films being made, and certainly fewer dramas being made. And actors want to do interesting roles. And so I try to write really good scripts, and then I hang on to them for a while, and revise and revise and revise to the point where I just know it's going to be really difficult for an actor to turn me down.
What really excites you about a script that's not yours? What are kind of the things you're looking for?
I look for an individual voice that is going to be able to be realized. So if I get a script, first I want to know, all right, is this original? Is it a take on life that is specific to this person and that only this person could tell? And that person could either be the writer or director, and often it's the same person. And then, are they going to be able to realize it? Because sometimes you can get onto a set and the idea was great, and the author of it is fantastic and has the best intentions, but he doesn't have the resources, or she doesn't have the resources, or sometimes you can intuit that there are other people who are going to be involved, and they're going to screw with it, and they're not going to let the person really ultimately realize what they've been brave enough to put on paper. And so that's what I look for. And that's more important. Those two aspects of it are more important than anything else. Whether how big the part is, more important than how big the part is, more important than how much I'm going to be paid.